Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we had Shirley Coyle in studio from Cree talking circadian lighting. Greg, man, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, great conversation, an interesting product, and be exciting to see where that goes in the future.
You know what's interesting about that is the idea of a troffer as it's almost like, I'll let you listen to the show, folks, but this is interesting. This is a really interesting podcast, and if you're into troffers, and I am, so there you go. And
Just
most of the
happened
guys,
to be.
yeah, most of the guys that listen to this podcast and gals listening to this podcast, they're into troffers too.
Hey, producer here, just cutting in to say that, wow, yes, the Cadient is troffer shaped and replaces a troffer. It's not really a troffer, it's its own whole category of thing. We're going to come up with a catchy name for it pretty quick, or someone will. In the meantime, back to the show.
This episode of the show is brought to you by Kurtzon, specification grade, million hours in business. You got to go to kurtzon.com. That's KURTZON.com. Greggy, kurtzon.com.
That's right. We know about their unique product line that they have, and in addition, now they're getting into the circadian lighting area. They partnered with BIOS, who was originally established for the International Space Station to work with astronauts and in space and figuring out how they can keep to a circadian rhythm with their lighting that they have because it's all indoors. And now they are putting it in their fixtures. Kurtzon has that capability in many of their fixtures, so check those out. What an awesome solution for a spec grade fixture. Now you can make it spec grade and circadian friendly. Get them.
Go to the specification grade kings. That's Kurtzon with a K, KURTZON.com, baby. Over 1 million hours in business. And of course, this episode of the podcast and every single one we have done, it all started with the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Folks, our convention, April 19th to 23rd. Check out the itinerary. It'll be linked on the podcast here. This one is hot, man. It is hot. We're coming in with a wicked itinerary. It's going to be super tight. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to have some fun. Come on, folks. NAILD.org. Check out the itinerary and register now. Distributors especially. Come on out. But for right now, Shirley Coyle, Cree Lighting. Check it out. Get a grip on lighting. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, Shirley Coyle.
Thanks very much. I'm really happy to be here, Michael.
Say hi to Greg Garrick, who's remote.
Hey, Greg. Nice to see you.
I see you. Thanks for coming in studio. Always liked having that. Yeah.
Appreciate being there.
So it's always better in person.
Yeah.
So you walked into a light bulb store.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the trenches of the lighting business.
Right.
So a lot of times when we're talking, and we're here to talk about health and wellness in the lighting and from lighting technology, from electric light sources.
Sure.
And you're at the place where people are right in front of the end user. So contractors and customers come into this store, and Greg, he's not as big a counter guy as a lot of nail members, but his people are in front of people that are going to buy these fixtures.
Right.
And I think this industry is really ready for a non-energy payback message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see a lot of notes there.
Mhm.
Where are we at when it comes to health and wellness? And are we at a point where people that are, ivory tower stuff at conventions is great,
Right.
but people in front of customers are going to be able to say, you should do this, and here are the reasons why.
Right. So I would say, first of all, the reason for all my notes is that I'm not a researcher. I'm not an academic. So my goal here is to try to see what I've seen at some of those conferences, what we're seeing in the IES, the Illuminating Engineering Society, some of our committee work, and what I'm seeing when I'm out talking to lighting designers and lighting consultants on this, and what kind of demands the people who are designing buildings are getting right now. So I don't think it's probably flowed as far as the electrical contractor walking in to buy product yet, but people are hearing about it. And I do think it's the sort of silver lining or the positive that we can see as we've all of us in this in the big LED conversion have kind of driven down the pricing and margins along the way, the profitability. So there's a lot of good enough product out there. A lot of it's difficult to differentiate in a lot of cases. So I think this whole aspect of lighting for that's something other than just being able to see a piece of paper or see our surroundings to move around. This is a really positive stage that we're going into for lighting, just because it is going to be something where there is more value to sell in lighting, where we can make an impact, a much bigger impact than we have, say, just in the visual acuity part of things, where we're just lighting to see tasks. So I would say it's still at a rapidly evolving stage, so it's very fluid. So some of the things I wanted to go through is just sort of, what are we talking about? Why do we want to do this? What's the research saying right now? Are there standards? And then, what are we comfortable doing right now and what do we think we should hang back on, right? As far as waiting for more research, more information.
I'm gonna kind of speak to Greg here
Yeah.
and you and you together here. So I think we know that we can hurt people with lighting.
Yeah, it's definitely a big concern among all the lighting community that we don't want to do any harm, for sure. The reality is we're already putting lighting into spaces every day, and people are living and working and socializing and getting healthcare under the lighting that we're putting out there.
Sure.
So we're already having an impact. What's been really amazing is finding out how big an impact, and it's not just circadian lighting. It's just it's not just resetting our clock. There's a lot more to it than that, as we find out. So that's one of the reasons it's been difficult to come up with standards right away, just because as the research comes out, we find out it's more and more complex than what we
Sure.
thought.
I had Dr. Jennifer Veach
Yes,
in
I
here,
saw that now.
and it was an incredible honor, actually.
Oh, she's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. And she talked a little bit about integrative lighting, was a term she threw
That's
out.
the CIE's term. Yeah.
Yeah, and she talked. We also spoke about what light is.
Yes.
We're kind of like fish figuring we're out
Yeah.
in water in a way.
Right.
And so we know we can hurt people with flicker. We know this is that's an issue that we don't want to have that. We know how casinos work. We know that casinos are basically circadian rhythm disruptors. Like that's part of they've known this for years, that if you shine white light directly into people's eyes, it causes some sort of hypnosis effect, right? It's part of the effect of it. And, so we're kind of carving away and eliminating those bad effects. And sometimes we reintroduce them, like we did with LEDs and flicker, which we got rid of with T8s. But now, there's talk about, really, Ute Bessenecker talked about supplements. It's more like a supplement.
Right.
That's how she described it. And most scientists are very, a little bit standoffish from claims. And we know that good interior design makes people feel better.
Right.
So if you're in a well-designed space, it feels good. But where's the jumping off point, if there is one, is there yet, where, people are going to start having this in upgrade proposals, that there's some sort of payback there? Are we at that point yet, Shirley?
I think we're seeing some demand from the development industry, certainly from large employers. You definitely see requests for the well building standard, so we can talk about that a little bit. That's it's a voluntary building standard that's come out, and the idea of it is lighting is only one of 10 different concepts within the well building standard, but it's things like air and thermal condition and access to good food, being able to move in the space. So lighting is one of the conditions, and the reason that somebody might design their building that standard is it's meant to make your employees healthier and more productive, to make your property more appealing, that you can get people to come and rent or lease your space because you're well building listed, to increase the value of the property, and to retain employees along the way. So I think there are some, when we look at, and it gets talked about a lot these days, the energy cost of operating any business is really very small compared to the people cost of the building. So if we can start having impact on retaining employees, attracting employees, and making them more productive and feel better about working, that can have a much bigger impact. So
Where are you seeing the demand for the well building? Because we had a guest on that we talked to about well building standards, and it sounded like, if I remember right, Mike, maybe you can correct me, but it was in Europe more prominently than it was in North America. Are you seeing that shift? Is it still worldwide, or is it in certain
We're
areas that you're seeing more?
I would say in North America, we're seeing it more in the major, I would say some of the markets like San Francisco, LA, New York. So tend to be larger employers, sort of the top 100 employers, big employers. I think the GSA is looking at it. They've certainly been participating in terms of standards. The IES, Jennifer Veach is part of that committee, our health and human health, light and human health committee, and then there's another standard that just came out this week that's from UL. It's the first time they've done a lighting standard. Now it's not a consensus-based standard in the same way it's not an ANSI standard, but there is certainly participation there from the GSA. So I think there are large employers looking at this, trying to be more holistic, and I think for most of us, the reality is that as we've learned more about the inputs that light give to our different systems, not just circadian, but our other biological and behavioral, that we find out that most of us are spending most of our days in under-lighted spaces. So even what our recommended standards are for being able to see a task on the table or to navigate around a space is not high enough to actually reset what our body needs during the day. So we know that most of us spend 90% of our time indoors. We're not getting enough light, and then when we're at home in the evening, we're getting far more light than we were ever programmed to get. So there are some basic things right now where we probably need to deliver more light, at least in the morning, for spaces that, especially that people sleep in. It's different if somebody's only coming in, say, for a few hours into a space. I think it'll be spaces where we're seeing the uptick, Greg, is really for healthcare spaces where people live there full time and maybe don't have access. They can't get up and go outside. So somebody who's in a care facility, say an Alzheimer's care facility, long-term health care where people are assisted and can't necessarily get out, and in spaces where people have to live and sleep, say in intensive care places where they're going to be inside and have no access to daylight for long periods. I think those will be the first areas that we move, because if somebody's only coming into work for those 8 hours, you really have no control over what other light exposure they get before or after work. So it doesn't really make sense to affect them. But if somebody has to sleep in that space and be there 24 hours, that seems to be where the researchers are saying those are the first spaces to tackle.
Do you think, how about existing versus new buildings? I understand new buildings, it makes sense all day to consider, but an existing building that has a lighting system, is this something you're seeing equal demand for? Or
I would see
less?
we've seen when we're out talking to the specification of the lighting design community, they indicate it's mostly new construction, but then big operators of existing, like the GSA, government services in the U.S., they definitely have a big inventory of existing buildings, and it's often a problem in those buildings that they were designed under the old school, where private offices probably ringed the windows. All the rest of the employee workforce is in the middle of the building, not getting much access to daylight, and we're not talking about really complex systems. Sure, there are really some interesting products coming out in this, but you can do it just with. So there are two ways to affect it. It's either intensity, so just being able to have something that's a dimmed fixture that maybe has a higher capacity, so you can bump up the light level, because it's about the amount of light getting into the eyes of the people. So you got to do the calculations a little bit differently. A plane of light at wherever you think people are looking, because it's got to get into their retinas. So all you need to do is boost the light level. There are some of the researchers that just say, we don't need all this color tuning stuff, just increase the light level for 2 or 3 hours in the late morning. And the other thing is, if you're doing a renovation, most products these days do have dimming, because we can do it so much more easily with LED. A lot of them have color tuning as well, where there's still white, tunable white, it's often called, where you can move from, say, something warmer in the morning at a lower level, go up to something higher midday, and then warm it up again at the end of the day.
So
So in your opinion,
oh, you go ahead, Greg. You
real
finish up
quick,
your roll.
yeah. In your opinion, is dimming more important, or light intensity, or color tuning in terms of the health effects of lighting?
You can accomplish, it seems from the research, the amount of light we need in either way. So you either need just, even if your light isn't tunable for color, you can just, if you have the space and the amount of light your light fixture can put out, you can increase it to get enough light if the fixture is designed. So in a space like this, we've got indirect lighting. It'd be really challenging to get the amount of light into your eyes if it's bouncing off the ceiling first. So part of it is, so it's a bunch of different things. It's the amount of light, if you can do it with that. It's the duration. It's the spectral content. So how much of the short wavelength, what we tend to call blue light, how much of that is in there? And then the distribution of the fixture, and then what kind of exposure has that person already had today. So part of it is a history, and the complexity is that everybody's a little bit different. So it's hard. You've got to sort of pick something in the middle and at least increase. We know we could use more. The other thing is simple advice is get up and get outside for 10 or 15 minutes every morning.
I got an issue. I got to pick something on my list here in the direction to go with this show, because I got a ton of things. Okay, so one of the interesting parts for me that has kind of occurred to me multiple times on this show, okay, is that for my whole life, I'm 42.
Right.
I've been told that the sun is bad for me.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been told to wear sunscreen. I've been told to wear sunglasses. Right. And I've been told this by marketing from, sunglasses companies and sunscreen companies. And it seems to be ever higher, ever more. Right. And I believe a lot of the sun damage arguments, right? Yeah. I'm not saying that those are false. But what's interesting now is are people that are sensitive to high levels of light, are they now going to wear sunglasses inside? And I'm not asking you this question, but we're bringing up making light brighter. We're bringing up shining vertical foot candles into people's eyes.
Right.
People do not like this. And I'll tell you right now,
Sure.
I've been in this game for almost 20 years.
Right.
And I know that people do not like vertical light coming in their eyes.
Right.
And I know this from building many different lighting systems for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that office workers, not factory workers and warehousing workers, they like lots of light.
Right.
Okay. But I know that office workers can be very, very particular.
Sure.
About bright lights, not wanting bright lights, taking, we'll do a relamp. People will take tubes out of their fixtures. They'll climb on their desks to take tubes out of their fixtures. And so are we biased as an industry? Like, are we reaching for something that maybe people don't care about that much?
Well, it's possible. I totally agree with you that people hate glare and flicker, as you mentioned earlier. I think it's going to be challenging for us because as we've tried to put in metrics and sort of measurements for luminaires that keep glare out and try to do indirect designs, that kind of thing, the challenge is we're now not getting enough light. But I mean, if you think about us walking out into a sunny morning, it's 10,000 times more than the light we have in here, and we don't, obviously our pupils are going to contract, and we will end up. We manage it. We have this amazing eye that can then move through very, very different light levels, big changes, step changes. But we have to get better at how we design the luminaires to create some more light, and you can do it without making the space uncomfortable. And we're only talking that sort of as you get to that middle of the day when there should be a bunch of sort of bright daylight. I think some of the prototypes we've seen are luminaires sitting right on the computer, shining back in the people's eyes. And I can't imagine most of us wanting to sit under that. But I would say some of the technology we're seeing, it's really how you design the luminaire. If you can make something luminous and just lift the whole light level, but it's comfortable, I think that we'll be able to do something that make people feel good. Some of the testing that we've done in terms of a dynamic skylight type of product. If we ran people through a simulation at Light Fair, the big show where we had people go through sort of a 2-minute program where it would go into darkness and rain, and it went gray, and then it came back up again, was quite bright, and people made the comment at the end of it, "Wow, that felt great when the sun came out again." When it felt bright again. So I think if it's done well, there is some kind of, whether it's, not making health claims, but just the way people feel when they are getting a lift, that there's more light when they expect it, sort of the end of the day. You don't want to be blasted with that first thing in the morning, but it happens very gradually over time. So you're not going to notice that it's suddenly gone to a cooler light and lots of it.
So we know that Adam Lillian, you're talking about at UL, I think he's leading that program. He had brought up that what was interesting was that he had looked at 200 different studies of natural light in classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
and windows and skylights in classrooms correlate to higher test scores.
Right.
Okay, but what he said was interesting from his findings is so do sun tunnels.
Okay.
So sun tunnels eliminate kind of your view of the outside.
Right.
So that's a bizarre finding. So that means there's something to natural light that we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but that in these studies has correlated to higher test scores or higher productivity, or I can't remember exactly what he had
Right.
said. But there's a correlation. No, we don't know if it's causational,
Mm-hmm.
but sun tunnels throws the, people like to look out the window or people like to look outside. It throws it out, right? It's like, well, why are sun tunnels
Right.
helping? So something's interesting going on there. What I want to ask is, and I've seen the Cadient product,
Mhm.
okay, is replicating the color and the change of light levels and this sort of thing, is replicating it going to be the same thing?
No, definitely not the same thing, and that's definitely not the claim. We're putting it out there as solving a problem in spaces deep inside buildings where you have no access to natural light and no chance for so absolutely the very first thing that you want when you're designing a building or setting it up for people is to take advantage of daylight and have the real views and the real daylight in spaces where you can't do that. So it's a lab in an interior of a space, it's an employee break room that's in the middle of the building core, it's a subterranean level where you've got offices or a conference room that has no windows and people have to sit in there all day. The idea of this product was to, there are other skylights out there, but where you can't put in an actual skylight, and there are other electric skylights out there. But the difference in this is, and it was about a 5-year project for our Santa Barbara research team, was how much do you need to break the ceiling plane? So it has about a 5-inch regress, and then the top panel kind of simulates a sky feeling, and there aren't clouds on it or anything. It's done with cyan blue LEDs, so it has a very blue intense. So when you look at it across the room and the way the light comes in, and the side panels feel like the sun. And what's different about them is that there's actually movement in the fixture, and that's part of what gives people a sense that feels like daylight, because it's not just gradually tuning color and the whole thing changes and goes back down. It's that these panels are brighter in the morning, like as though the sun is touching that side. The sky gets cooler and cooler to midday, and then it's all evenly illuminated midday, all the panels. And then as it goes into the afternoon, these panels get warmer as the sky gets warmer again too. So it gives a sense of movement. It breaks the ceiling plane and just gives a little sense of daylight. So it wouldn't be your main luminaire in the building. It's in that space. It would just be something to supplement. You could have the other, if you had linear luminaires or troffers, you could have them also tracking on the same change from warm to cool, but they wouldn't have the sky effect in them. That's the difference. So just to give a
So
sense.
you're saying the movement part of it is the important thing.
And breaking the ceiling plane and having kind of a sky in there. But yeah, It
Okay.
is, what's different about it from anything else is out there is really the movement from one side to the other. And you can program that if the way you have the luminaires installed, you want it to go from east to west or whatever people want in terms of, but it does get a lot of light out at very high angles because a lot of the light is coming out the side panels. So that's the kind of light you need to be able to hit the well building or other circadian standards. You need to get a fair amount of light that's coming out vertically, and it doesn't feel intense because it feels more like a skylight.
And I think you said that whatever people want, but I don't think people really know what they want.
No.
So I assume you guys are going in and saying this is what you should do when you put these in. Is that correct?
It's possible it only launched just in the late fall, and we basically spent maybe 3 different rounds of light fair talking to the lighting design community who are working on these spaces, saying, what do you need? Does it need this? Does it have to have the movement? Can we get rid of that? Because obviously there's complexity when you do that, because you've got a driver for the sky, a driver for each of the 2 sides. So but that was the feedback we got from them. Well, no, this really feels like it's something different. The other one just feels like a regular color tuning troffer fixture. So where we're taking it out now and showing people, it's mainly to the people who are designing those buildings. So, and the reaction has been, oh my gosh, this solves a problem in areas where we don't have another tool to do this right now.
So lighting designers are always like are very susceptible to the latest and greatest. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean that's I kind of insulting them. I don't mean it that way. I don't mean Greg. Do you know what I mean though, right? They're
Yeah, I do.
reaching. They're reaching for the the latest design concept. That's where they exist in that world, right? Distributors, would be more in the proven and reliable area of the lighting. I think this is super fascinating. And one of the notes that I wrote when you were speaking was this: wouldn't it be interesting, Greg, if the entire thing got turned on its head? And what I mean is this. So lighting has been driving energy efficiency for 2 decades.
Right.
First with high efficiency fluorescent, then to LED. And so we have been responsible for probably, I don't know what the percentage is, but the vast majority of energy savings in our industrial facilities has been lighting, right?
Right.
Wouldn't it be interesting though if it turned around and said, hey, if you want to get these health effects, what we have to do is increase the wattage of all these fixtures because we need to do all this other fancy stuff.
Yeah.
So sorry, but lighting's going to grab back all that energy we saved, and we're going to use it to deploy these healthy lighting systems. Are these fixtures energy efficient?
They're less energy efficient than what we're used to because you've got 3 drivers in there to get the complexity. So you are trading off efficacy. So, and that's a fair point. That's, Bob Davis at PNNL did a presentation at the annual IS conference this summer saying, hey, here are the energy effects of all this that we're heading towards with lighting for human health. We need to anticipate that there could be at least certain times a day, you're going to have an increase in energy.
At the worst
if
times,
it's 2 to 3
probably.
hours in the late morning is when you want that. And say you're running a hospital where you might have 3 shifts, that peak might happen 3 times during the day as each shift hits their middle of the day, which, if you're trying to do a profile that works for all 3 shifts. So yeah, that's reality. And the way the codes, and if you look at ASHRAE, and the expectation is every year it's a drop in energy consumption. I think most people feel we're kind of tapped out in that way, that if anything, it needs to go the other way. But you're right, that's a reality of this. And I would say in terms of lighting designers, they are at the front line of this, and they're always looking for ways to solve, for them, they get called in on more the projects that are the more complex, where they're trying to solve something. So you're right. This is something that's aimed more at solving those solutions. But if you think even about corridors in buildings, or high end, you look at a fitness center in a small boutique hotel. They're underground. Sure, would they use something like this? So it's never going to be the a fixture on a specification or on a project, but it is going to it's going to make a difference in solving that problem.
So yeah, just to confirm that, I guess that was my question. You might have answered it, but I want to double check. So it's never going to, you're saying that this type of technology will never replace your general light source that you use to see what you're doing. You're saying it's always going to supplement it.
I would say something like a dynamic skylight or something really specialized like that is going to be more of a feature in a space. So there are exceptions to that. You might run into, say, an underground, convention space where they're trying to lease out a space, and this would be a way to turn it into something that didn't feel like a dungeon. But those would be more exceptions. Or you might have a medical center, at least in the U.S. market, with private healthcare, where it's a high-end facility and they've got a bunch of examination rooms, and this is a way to have something nicer. Or a chemo infusion treatment room where people are stuck there for hours and hours every day, and there's one window and everybody fights over the chair by that window. So there might be some places like that where it would be more. But in terms of bringing light for human health into other spaces, I think that is going to be just part of what we think about when we design every space. So it'll probably start on the healthcare side first, but then I think over time we will just expect. I think we already do expect them. Every luminaire is going to be dimmable, and that you might want to allow for an extra. So you design for the basic visual task, but then also have some headroom in the luminaire, so that you can dial it up as we learn more. You want your space to be future proof, so that you can in when we have more details on what else we should be doing with this and how to think about it in terms of the amount of light and what time of day, that can just be programmed into it.
But from a practical matter, like actually, where do you install it? Do you need to physically see it at points to feel the effects, or does it just felt in the space? Because you talked about movement. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to figure out, is do you actually have to have it like, in somewhere that you're looking at all the time to feel
No,
it, or is it just
sorry,
yeah.
I'm probably confusing the two things. The movement thing is more just that kind of a dynamic skylight like that gives somebody the sense that it actually is daylight, or that it's a little bit
You're
of
a
daylight.
trickster.
No, to actually get the light and have the effect for human health is just to have the light. It has to get into your eyes at least. So if
Sure.
it's indirect and way overhead, it has to bounce around in the room and get into the eyes. So you have to do those calculations. So it spectral reflectances matter. So if you've got dark walls like this, you're losing more light. So there are tools out there right now. There's something called Alpha, which works with Rhino software that people who are doing the designs can put in the spectral reflectances of all their furniture and figure out with the typical lighting system that you were going to tell them to buy, they can plug it in and see what kind of light they get. They have to sort of figure out where people are going to sit and work, which is challenging in a lot of office spaces are now have multiple possible layouts. So it does take some more figuring out.
There's an interesting sort of our society seems to be fracturing,
Mhm.
okay, into different kind of conceptual frameworks of how to look at the world. You see, like we want to reduce our carbon footprint. Like that would be a generally accepted normative assumption or
Right.
whatever, right? And then we want to improve health and wellness for the naked apes that live in these buildings, right? And then you have like these competing priorities in a
Mhm.
sense, right? And also with that comes the introduction of complexity,
Yes.
right? So now we're also introducing, you used to have squeak, 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 or twist the light bulb in and you're done. You order a box of lights from Premier Lighting in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and you get your box of lights, you change the light bulbs, and off you go. And now your lighting system becomes people say, well, no, it's simplified. It's run on. Well, I think that the more you introduce, the more complicated. Where is it? Are these two aims, the energy efficiency aim, the low carbon footprint aim, and the human health and wellness aims, are they less? What is it? Are they closer together than I perceive them to be as a lighting distributor? To me, they seem to be opposite aims.
Yes, there is some conflict and that you're going to have to weigh out, but I think that's a pretty typical sort of you have to weigh out for the decision what things are most important, and you think about if this is a space, depending on how it's being used. If you're operating a hospital in the U.S. and you can improve people's health outcomes by delivering the light when they need it, and it helps in their healing process, because there are biological effects of this as well, and you can get them out the door a day earlier and have someone else in that bed, then that's part of being a profitable business and having better health outcomes for the people. And I think for large employed forces, that's an important cost too. So getting our carbon footprint down, we're not talking about huge differences for the vast majority of lighting. So the more complex product that I talked about is more of a specialty or solving a specific problem that's a little bit different the way it does it. But the day-to-day, luminaires with dimming drivers in them, that's standard fare these days. So I think it will be more as we find out more research results. We got lots of research already coming out, but it seems like every time there's more research, it says, oh, it's even more complex than we thought. There are 5 different types of these receptors in our eyes, and there are all these different factors. But as we learn more, we'll be able to move on certain types of lighting already and then figure out how to do it more effectively. But I think the big impact on people in general in terms of having more consolidated sleep, and for Alzheimer's patients, same thing. If you can deliver a certain amount of light, then there are several studies and a bunch of studies that have already been done that I'm sure you've heard about from the other people who've been in here, but where they put in this kind of lighting in spaces. So the Swedish Health Behavioral Unit in Seattle that was done, that DOE did a report on, they basically they'd added space in between 2 floors in a hospital. They had not much access to daylight, so they did just light that in their common areas and where they activity and dining area, where the light would go from warm in the morning to cooler midday and higher light levels, and then back down to warm for the late day and evening. And it had multiple effects. So it ended up consolidating the sleep for people who had more broken sleep patterns because they weren't getting enough daylighting. It allowed people to be more calm. They had fewer incidents in the space. So we're seeing, and that's just one study. So you need multiple studies, and you need to be able to get it peer reviewed and then also replicate the results. So we're still early days, but it seems like there are already some effects that aren't expensive to do.
Yeah, that was going to be my question: is when do you think it'll actually be? Because from our standpoint, selling lighting has been relatively easy. You go from this to this, you save that much money.
Right.
That's math, right? That's easy.
Yeah.
This is no defined process, and you can't point to a specific study and say you're going to get this because you do this.
Well, Greg's not
think
smart
we'll-
enough.
to that point?
Greg's
I'm
not smart enough. He's,
That's number one.
This whole
But
thing is
how-
pretty daunting. Yeah.
How are you going to make me smart enough so that I can sell it? That's my question.
As you can see by my notes here, I'm
so here,
I'm
yeah,
struggling with
gonna
this.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna throw you. I'm gonna throw like a little negative curveball into this. So
Sure.
I don't know if it's ethical to trick people into thinking it's sunlight. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you know what I don't? I'm not sure that. And are there? I'm not sure that. This strikes me as somewhat manipulative in a way.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not against. I'm just like I'm trying to put on the host of the show, make it interesting hat. But to me, it's like there's like when you talked about the patients that were sleeping better. So
Mhm.
literally, the lighting designers tricked them into thinking they were outside, or their circadian rhythms succumb to a positive manipulation through electric light. How's that?
Yeah, I guess I don't see it as manipulated. It's if we're going to keep people indoors all day, that's
Right.
not what we evolved under, and we need more light for these systems to
Sure.
operate. So I think it's really just delivering what the body needs. And in terms of tricking people, giving people a sense of daylight in a space that's drab and dreary, if they look at it, they know that's not the sky. It's more just the way the space feels to them when there's some movement in the space. So in general, the reaction for people who are experiencing it, it's like, oh, that feels better. That's
So their circadian rhythms are succumbing to this artificial. Like you have some studies that show that they are sleeping better at night and are having wellness impacts from this.
so. If we're talking about the specific product,
Not the product, but no, but just the
just in
studies.
general, like, well, yes, they're not necessarily having their circadian rhythms reset, but they are getting enough light that it keeps them from having fractured sleep. So it consolidates their sleep, so they're getting better. They're not waking and
That's fascinating, actually.
it really is. It's a pretty amazing thing to see. So there are a lot of studies, and this is really a huge issue. Right now, the standard that just came out from UL is based on it's described as day active people. So people just in their workday spaces. It's a whole other issue when we start looking at people who are working shift work around, on a long-term basis and working during the night and getting exposed to work during the nighttime hours. That World Health Association has talked about that as a carcinogen, that it's dangerous when we disrupt on a long-term basis. So there are some, for people who are doing shift work, it's a separate, very challenging issue that there's a lot of research out there. But in most cases, we're talking about people who we're just in daytime spaces where the light level is much lower than it should be, what our bodies need. And it's not just for the circadian clocks. There's something like 40% of those of the where the sensors are going to in the brain are non-circadian. So there are other things that affect mental health and behavior, so endocrine systems and things where it affects our biology if we're not getting enough light. So it seems the more that is found out about this, the more reason there is to try to figure out what how we can get more light delivered and what the right way is to do it. So obviously the way we've been installing lighting in the ceiling, which most of us are doing, is a bit challenging in terms of getting the light down where people need it, and it needs to be comfortable for people. So I think this is going to be the great challenge to the lighting community, to industrial designers, to figure out what can we do. And certainly in most LEDs, we've just taken the existing form factors that we had, troffers, downlights, whatever, and just jammed LEDs in there, some more elegantly than others. But maybe there are other ways to integrate lighting into the building
Hmm.
envelope. But it's really challenging when you're right. The day to day is that people just come in and say, "Give me whatever I need for this space that I'm doing right now." So,
Whose role is it to determine the health effects of lighting? UL is doing standards. IES is working on it. DLC, Lighting Research Center, manufacturers like Cree.
mhm.
Who's in charge of this? Is it anybody's game right now? Is there
Get a
ever going
grip
to be
on
somebody
lighting.
that can decide
Get a
on?
grip on
Get a
lighting.
grip
Let's
on
vote for
lighting.
that. I think
Got a
it's
lot of
in.
different avenues here.
I think it's in everybody's interest to be part of. To me, it's the whole lighting community owns it. I would say in a broader way, but certainly it's the researchers that we look to do the research, and we have lots of great research institutions that are doing great work in this. So LRC, and they participated on the UL committee. On the IES committee, we've got Bud Brainerd from Jefferson University at Philadelphia, worked on the NASA stuff. Stephen Lockley from Harvard, Jennifer Veach, obviously from NRC. So, and there are lots more working on this, PNNL. Everybody is keeping tabs on it. There's a workshop at the end of this month that DOE and IES are holding jointly. So I think, and manufacturers in most cases, like us and others, are working. We would work with LRC or whatever organization to say, hey, here are some products. Can we work on this? And we work to try to support and get research that's independent that they do to try to say, are we on the right track with a certain product? So we're all waiting to get more information back, and then it's up to the standards organizations. And I mean, IS is the ANSI organization for lighting in North America, and it's a consensus base, so it does take longer. And we've got all those different voices, and the researchers, honestly, they don't all agree, because some of them feel like we should move ahead right now. Some feel like, hey, wait, we've got more to figure out right now, and this is too important to just start. And some of them say, no, let's get going right now. We can do it right now in places where people have to sleep there overnight. There are some things we know right now where we can at least start on what we know right now, but there isn't total agreement. And there are also different methods for calculating the stuff we're talking about. So you can do these calculations to figure out, because all our standards have been based on horizontal light levels on a work plane or on the task. This is different. It's at the eye, and it has to get into the
Nobody
eye.
walks around like this.
I know. And then somebody might wear a ball cap in the office, and that changes too how much light's getting into your eye.
First of all, no.
So there's a lot more to figure out, but I agree, it's complex.
You know what? I think that's the tip of the spear.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
We're
I'm
in
saying?
early days,
Yeah, and but you know what really strikes me as with this whole there is and I don't want to get spiritual here, but sometimes I do. There is a
It's
lot of
early on a Monday.
aspects to light, that
Yes.
in a sense we're creatures of the light.
Mm-hmm.
All of our energy comes from light from the sun. And we've had a lot of interesting people on this podcast that come to us and talk about the IR effects of natural light
Right.
that are absent in artificial or electric light. There's a lot of angles to this, and I think it's when this is discovered, or when we figure out, or when we carve away all the bad to a point where we think we've accomplished something, it will mark an epoch in human existence. I really believe that, because there is a sense, we're spinning around a light ball in a
Right.
way. You understand what I mean? And
Mhm.
that light ball is attaching us somehow.
Right.
And so there's like a spiritual, philosophical, conceptual, practical, all sorts of elements related to this. And I think when we figure out how light works, what it actually is and what it does for us, and how we receive it and interact with it, and that whole fish in water kind of
Mhm.
metaphor,
Becoming aware.
of it, I think it will be an epoch in human existence, and from there all will be different.
Right.
I really truly believe that.
I think it will change a lot, and it really has only been a decade and a half since we even realized that lighting is more than just something to show us how to do a task and get around in a space, that it has this other many huge other impacts on our bodies.
Our minds, our spirits, our
yes.
souls, everything. Who we are in the
there's
universe.
A lot to learn. So I understand people are impatient, say, "Oh, why is this taking so long? Can't we just get on with it?" And there probably are some things we can start doing now without doing harm. But there's a lot of concern within the lighting design community too about, they don't want to be prescribing lighting. Don't ask us to be doctors, But the reality is, every day right now we are by what you sell out there at the
Sure.
counter. There is product that we're putting into spaces right now that's having an impact, for good or bad, on people. So I think this is all important to all the stakeholders in the lighting community.
Shirley Coyle from Cree Lighting. Thank you for being a guest on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast.
Thank you. Happy to
Really
be here.
enjoyed it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks,
time.
Greg.
Kurtzon.com's gone circadian, man. Go to KURTZON after 1 million hours. They've gone circadian, Greggy.
That's right. They have it in a variety of their fixtures, including one of your favorite ones, the anti-ligature.
Ooh, we love those anti-ligature ones. You know why?
That has
Because
the
every
button,
time
yeah.
I record one of these podcasts, I feel like I want to hang myself. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Oh, the anti-ligature pictures are up there.
You can't do it there. And now they have circadian capabilities with their partnership with BIOS. So they have it in a variety of their fixtures. They have it in spec grade. You know, Kurtzon just knows what they're doing. They've been in business, so one of the longest out of any lighting company out there. And they keep
You're up
going
there with
strong
GE,
today.
dude.
They are, man. That's a long history. Great company. Go check them out.
Go to KURTZON.com, baby. That's Kurtzon.com. Almost 1 million hours or over 1 million hours, something like that. Long time, brother. Almost as old as Canada. And they've gone circadian. So go get them. KURTZON.com. And of course, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. What are we doing? We're getting together. We're going to have a little, what do you call it? A shindig down in Biloxi,
Shindig.
Mississippi. Come on, man. April 19th to 23rd. We're shindigging it up down in the great state of Mississippi. I can't wait to go. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. The convention itinerary is out now, and it's one of it is the best convention you can go to if you're a lighting distributor, hands down. Because we're talking about what we need to do to be relevant in this business and to grow and to succeed in the future. That's what this convention is all about. Get people
Yep.
together, talk it through, plan for the future, have success, everything you need.
You know what's
check
funny
it
is that I can't wait to see the social media presentation because it's like, can you sell light bulbs on Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest? Like, I'm not talking about, my wife uses Pinterest like crazy, dude. Okay. She's Pinterest
Yeah.
crazy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, Pinterest, Instagram, Pinterest, right? And then I've seen these two, like sometimes Instagram's super devious because I'll get the weirdest ad on Instagram that's like totally what I need.
That's true.
It's so
Knows what you're up
weird.
to.
Yeah, dude. It's like,
It's
oh
checking your
God,
history,
it feels
man.
so gross. But you know what? At the end of the day, can we sell light bulbs on Instagram? I think there's going to be a raucous debate over that at the convention, man.
That'll be
So,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to be mediating the discussion. So if you like me, hey, maybe you'll like the convention too. And so go to NALD.org, check out the itinerary, register now. It's time to do it, man. Get down to Biloxi, Mississippi. And of
And
course,
if you don't like Mike, I'll be there if you like me. Or if you don't like either of us, there'll be other people that you like.
but there's also
go.
going to be an an autograph signing picture session with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. You can sit with us and take a picture. We'll sign your convention badge for you if you want. No, just kidding, man. You can come hang out with us, though. Have a couple beers. We're doing a pool party on Monday as well. We're going to be hopefully live streaming from the pool party, if it all technically works out. So bring a T-shirt and your flip-flops. Shirley Coyle, hey, that was fun. Thanks for coming into the studio. We always love it when people come in the studio, Greg. It's always better in person.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was good discussion we had with her. An interesting product. I'm excited to see where that goes, too.
You know what's it's interesting because that's the first thing. That was one of those things when I saw that Cadient troffer. Is that what it's called, Cadient?
Yeah, that's the name.
Yeah,
Cadient.
Yep.
Right? And you see it, it's like, wow, that's almost like augmented reality in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a form of augmented reality. It's like we're gonna play a trick on you to make you think this is a skylight.
Right. So you don't have to go outside. You can stay in here all the time. It's moving through. It's nice.
But is that one of those Google tricks where it's like, we'll get you to stay at work longer by doing your laundry? You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man, but it's just like, it's really interesting to see this industry's on the cusp of something huge with the circadian stuff, health effects and all this.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just something's going to happen that's going to blow everybody's mind. And then the price is going to go down by 90%.
Then we'll sell it and we'll all have success.
We're slinging daylight now, folks. Come on down. What do you got? I got me some Skylights, just like the sun. Yep. You put them in your office, it's going to be like the sun. You know, it's interesting because I actually think that's possible.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Like
I do too.
they grow coral with those 10,000 Kelvin lights. You ever sell any of those weird light bulbs? Every now and then we'll get a weird order.
Every now and then, yeah.
Some weird order for some weird light bulb. And it's like, wow, how did this come up? Right? And then, you know, it's how did you grow coral? Like you can grow coral with a 10,000 K fluorescent bulb or HID bulb? Wow, that's pretty wild. What can we actually do if we figure this thing out? It's crazy. But you know what?
Yeah.
If you want to be on top of everything, folks, just stay tuned. Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, because we'll be jumping on it like white on rice. Bye for now.
Written on the rectory wall, there's a sign there for all. You are lost, Lord is there to find you.